Before we get started, this episode is sponsored by Newts. Basically, this is my favorite supplement for energy, and I take it whenever I need to lock in. So if you're a founder, student, or new dad like me, you've got to try it. It's got guarana for energy, alpha GPC for memory, and L-theanine to avoid any crashes you're used to with tons of caffeine, energy drinks, or any bullshit like that. Again, try Newts. Just go to sendnewts.com. All right, let's get back to the episode. All right, welcome back to Out of Office. This is episode 8. We've got the founder of the wellness company, Presh Dineshkumar, with us. How are you doing, Presh?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, it's great to have you. We can kind of start maybe with how we met. You have a real relationship with Jason Calacanis, and I have a parasocial one. This pod isn't about me, but the short of it is when I was in San Diego, I started hearing a lot. I started learning what a startup was, started listening to This Week in Startups. Jason said anyone can join the syndicate. I figured out that I was anyone, joined the syndicate, came to San Francisco, lived vicariously through other founders, and here I am now. But I'm kind of curious how that relation started to you. He's famous from All In and everything else now, so it's probably what people want to hear first.
Yeah, actually, even before we get into that, we first met at one of this like Angel University course workshop that Jason did in like 2018. And that was like a year after I was working there. So that was the first time we met. And I recognized you from the syndicate, from like syndicate emails, and then saw you in person. So that was a cool encounter. But
for sure.
Yeah, man. So my journey started when I was in university. I hated my first year. And so I knew I couldn't go back to second year. And so I tried to find a job. And
what were you studying?
I was studying, it was just like a business commerce degree. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I probably would have went, if I stuck through it, probably like investment banking or some sort of finance job, but really had like no idea and wasn't too like deep into tech and wasn't on tech Twitter, but got introduced to this Week in Startups pod and started listening to that in like early 2017, and then learned about who Jason Calacanis was, and then went down the like tech rabbit hole, started following all the people on Twitter, and that was like a on-ramp into like Silicon Valley on social media. And then through that, because I enjoyed the pod and was learning about all these interesting founders and investors, I got really excited and sent a bunch of emails to basically the roster of founders and investors on This Week in Startups, trying to pitch a internship at the time. And I remember emailing like I didn't get any responses, but I was using Superhuman at the time, so I could see the read receipts on emails. Sure. And so I sent a bunch of emails to like Brian Chesky, and I would get so excited just like seeing the read receipts, seeing that, oh, Brian maybe opened my email and all that. But yeah, I got a number of responses. Jason was like one of the people I also reached out to, and he got back to me within like 5 minutes of the email asking, what are my skills and what would I do to improve his businesses, which was Launch and Inside at the time. So that was kind of the first like introduction into tech. Sent that cold email, and then long story short, ended up going out to San Francisco and I got a job working for Jason over the past like 7 years, and then recently left to start a company.
Nice. So and what was that period? How long were you investing with him?
So it was 2017 to just 6 months ago. So it was about 7 years. Yeah. And I didn't start. So my roles over that 7 years changed basically every 2 years. So the first 2 years I was deep on the podcast and media business and events business. This was pre-pandemic, so we were doing a lot of in-person things, like the Angel University course where we met. Founder University was in person, another like founder like education program. We had events called Launch Scale and Launch Festival. Those are big things. I remember my first like year, one of the big projects that I worked on was Launch Festival in Sydney, because we had this like 2-year contract hosting a startup conference in Sydney, Australia. So it was cool because like the first like 6 months working for Jason, he's like, okay, we're going to send you to Australia and you're going to figure out how to put this conference on. So me and a coworker, Osgood, went out, lived in Australia for like a month and a half, just trying to literally like learn how to put on a tech event there. And it was both of our first time. So we hadn't we had no experience prior to that, but yeah, that was fun. So all in all, the first 2 years was like media events business. Then I transitioned to the investment team and worked on our accelerator and a little bit of the syndicate. So started getting my hands in the investment world. And then the last 2 years also on the investment team, but more focused on a program called Founder University, which is where we would invest 25K into early like builder stage founders.
And real quick, so you dropped out of school to go chase this startup dream. Very admirable. That's becoming more and more common. I think you probably did that before it was cool to some extent. Do I have that right?
I mean, yeah, it kind of got exponential, I think, like during COVID. Yeah. Slightly before that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you end up working for this a guy who's on the up and up. You've seen this meteoric rise. Was it what you expected? I guess you went from potentially pursuing a career in finance to running events in Australia and then working on investments. Is that what you wanted? Did you just want excitement, or were you chasing something specific?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question, the excitement piece, because I think that was part of it for sure. Like, I knew I didn't want to do something traditional. And if I went to college, I felt like I was just gonna get, I was just gonna be bucketed in a traditional job. And I didn't really like, I didn't see any founders. I didn't grow up around like that world. So I never saw that you could just build products and build companies and build things. I wasn't really exposed to that. I would say growing up. Now I am, and like that's all I spend my time around. But so the excitement part was definitely interesting, and I kind of got to learn about Jason and his like lifestyle and like where he spent his time in Silicon Valley and meeting all these companies, and that really was interesting to me. And I knew if I could just work for someone like that, then I would be one step closer to kind of becoming that. So definitely excitement, I think, is was part of it. But I didn't have like an expectation. I knew it would be. I knew I kind of wanted a small team environment where I could probably learn better, and really I was kind of optimizing for the like building a close relationship with someone, and it could have been like any CEO or any investor, but I knew I wouldn't get that at like Big Co. So
Sure.
yeah, I think that was probably what I wanted. But yeah, didn't expect any of the kind of opportunities that came from it.
No, that's amazing, man. And I guess so. Presumably, you dropped out of school, or you did drop out of school. You told us that you did this instead of college. I guess you went to the School of Hard Knocks in some capacity. I think about this because that what you're doing, and I mean, I'm a founder now too, and I feel like I did do the college thing. I actually have a master's degree. Like I'm the worst. Like I really doubled down on this thing. I feel like I spent the first 5 years of my career almost unlearning a lot of what you learn in college, which is like, oh, go get a 4.0, don't actually learn anything at all, don't have any agency. And it wasn't until probably 3, 4 years ago where I really unlocked like, oh, I can just do things as the meme goes. And now I see people skewing younger and younger. Do you feel like you had this awesome experience coming up under a founder who was already kind of on his way up, or maybe even at the top of his game? How is that translated into now you're a founder? Maybe I'm jumping ahead here, but I'm curious how you evolved really through that process.
Yeah, I think it's super important, and I see that now as well with like hiring employees or coworkers that have maybe been in like a traditional tech role, or not even, or just like gone through like college experience, worked at a big company, tech or not. There's so much unlearning that has to come with it, and it's like almost like repeatedly like having conversations with them to like try to unlearn the things, or like try to help them understand that, oh, these things actually don't matter because we're so early, and it might be just like a big company thing that takes a lot of time, and we're optimizing for speed here. So I think I learned a lot of that. And like this is my first official company, so I'm still like going through all the things and learning all the things. But I would say I got a first row seat working at launch and for Jason, because we would invest in all these companies. I would see and read all the monthly investor updates. Karthik would have seen through the syndicate. We send up all these. We kind of train our founders to regularly send these monthly updates, and if they don't send it, we ping them. So through the syndicate emails, I would learn and just read all of those, and could kind of see how founders operate. And you can also gauge like the companies that are doing more like maybe generating more revenue or
Yeah.
have better product velocity. You can see that through updates and through revenue and start to make all these correlations. So I definitely started on third base because I dropped out of school, but still got to see the kind of founder journey and how that worked from like very early stage companies that we had exposure to with Founder University all the way to like Series A, B, C. We had no IPOs at the time, but the portfolio had IPOs. So it was cool to like get some experience of that while working at launch as well.
It's funny, you mentioned this founder updates. I'm part of a pretty young crypto social investment DAO now. And when we get those, they're pretty brief, like kind of more YC style, like what's working, what's not working, minor updates and ask, and that's it. And I remember a lot of people thinking, oh, this is kind of crap. Like, where's like this data, that data, whatever else we might have. Like, you mean like an Excel sheet, kind of like a data room. I was like, guys, this is an incredible update. Like, if we didn't get an update like this every like quarter or whatever, that means the company's out of business or worth $1 billion. So
Yes.
It's kind of funny like what to expect, especially when people are investing for the first time.
Yeah, I go back and I still have like some of the emails that founders would have sent while I was at launch, and I regularly go back to kind of the outlier ones just to like read the formatting and what they're talking about. And a lot of it is like not being afraid to share what's like going wrong with the business, and like that's probably would be at the top of the email. But it's easy to bury that and you just want to talk about the wins. But like most of the investors are trying to be helpful, so I think I learned that's like a huge piece. So like any asks or anything that's going wrong, just like highlight those number one and then get to all the other wins and good stuff later.
Was there a point in these 7 years when you thought maybe you'll go, raise some money, start your own fund and be an investor? Or like kind of when did you start realizing, which direction you were going? If there was a realization like that, or if it was just totally random.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I never actually cared or really like, well, I was interested in the investment side, but I was always more fascinated by like the founder story, the founder journey, creating products, what that takes, what that looks like, building a team. That was always, I think, even when I joined Launch, kind of the end goal for me, or one of the goals for me. So I kind of, even in my first like email to Jason, I can maybe even find it and throw a screenshot up, but it basically pitched like, I want to work for you and I want to start a company, and I think this would be a great place for me to learn, and I'll help you with whatever you need. So the goal was always, I think, to start a company, which like I didn't get first experience doing at launch. I was like more exposed to the investor side and all that like media stuff. But through that, I got the exposure to meet and build relationships with founders, and then got that education as well. So I think it started, and it always was, I wanted to be a founder, but then I learned the investment game as well, which was cool. And I never like dreamed of raising money for a company or like venture capital or any sorts, but I was always interested in starting a company. And maybe it's because like my ideas like at the time or even currently, like I didn't think they needed much capital to start, but like, maybe who knows, after the wellness company, if I do another company, maybe it'll be like something that requires venture capital. But I also like, I think maybe, actually this is interesting, I think maybe being at launch and being in VC, like seeing all the companies that raised VC that didn't actually need VC kind of like tainted my view on it. Like I kind of saw the downfall of a lot of these companies, or not even downfall, like profitable businesses that are generating millions in revenue, but just aren't venture scale. And I kind of leaned more into that category just because I like the ideas that I had weren't truly, I think, revolutionary or needed that upfront capital.
And how does that typically go south? So the companies that didn't need venture capital but raised, they're making millions of dollars. Are they setting up some dividend structure and just everyone's kind of happy but no one's super happy? Or what does that shake out to be typically?
Yeah, that's a good question. Interestingly, I think that's like now maybe a more common thing, or starting to be a thing with companies that raise VC, of like recapping and or like figuring out a pay structure to get investors capital. But generally speaking, like these VC firms and all the funds that we co-invested with and Launch itself, wanted a multiple or an exit or an IPO. and didn't want any dividend structure just because those would generally be less than the invested capital or not significant to return the fund, which is kind of the goal with these firms. So generally I didn't see that, but I know now, like nowadays there's like companies that are, even if they raise some money, they'll do a dividend structure, and as long as the investors are fine with that, then that works out. I think Basecamp is like the famous example of like not raising VC, or they raise some money from like Jeff Bezos, and then they just pay out a big dividend to their investors or shareholders. So I think that's like an interesting model, but it's not the VC model and the expectation.
And have VCs changed their? I don't know. You're not in that game anymore. Have they changed their strategy a little bit because of that? Are they looking for like? Are they much more, I guess, stringent on who they invest in on that side of things as well?
I think they've become more thoughtful post COVID for sure. Like, and I'm sure you saw like the number of investments and the companies that were being invested in. Majority of them probably didn't need venture, or the dollar amount of venture into those companies was probably too inflated anyways. I think now probably companies are, or investors are, being a bit more thoughtful. The tier ones have always invested in kind of outsized opportunities consistently. I think more like maybe first time fund managers and or angels and or like early stage investors are now kind of pivoting more to being more thoughtful about those companies. And when I say like the true like a venture capital model is like a milestone based thing and a big idea that needs capital upfront, generally. And I think what happened was a lot of investors and companies were just like raising for the sake of it, raising because they could. And so that kind of changed a little bit of the industry.
Yeah, but I think a lot of the problem there was that, being a founder became cool. And if money was easy, then being a founder also wasn't hard, right? Like this shouldn't denote it, but it was almost like, I don't know what happened with Allbirds. I don't know why they raised its software multiple, like it made no sense. And now it's all coming crashing down, and like, you won't be caught dead wearing them. But I think there was a period where, not to say the first shoe wasn't good. It's just like, this isn't a software company. This is never going to be Google, no matter what they do, even if they excel at everything, at 100%. I guess, what do you think about that? I don't know if it's changing. I mean, being a founder is definitely just cool now. I don't think that's changing.
Yeah.
But I do see that people are, well, it's getting kind of funny. Now people are like eating ramen and kind of like, don't have money anymore to start companies, which is how it used to be. But they're also now filming that, kind of sharing it on TikTok and stuff. So it's kind of weird. I think that's still better, but I don't know what you're seeing.
Yeah, that's hilarious. The whole content thing is super interesting because I'm experimenting also with that with building the wellness company, and started like a little vlog just to document it. There was the like benefit for me was just have some sort of documentation of building the company, and it would be cool to look back on. But I think like, yeah, being a founder, was and is cool. There's like a lot of, I mean, it's easy to look up to so like the Zucks, the Elons of the world, Brian Chesky, like incredible founders, right? And there's a lot of like case studies of all these like seemingly just random people making it big through building a tech product, or just being a founder in itself. And I think there's like a lot of the interesting pieces, like the course bros, or like dropshipper e-commerce folks I've seen like have consistently always like created content and courses, and that's like been always like top of funnel for them because that's how they kind of run their business. But now I'm seeing like more founders like building products, still documenting with no like goal of really building an audience, more like building the process, just so like one day if they make it big, it'd be like cool to look back on. I think I'm seeing more of that on YouTube, or at least because I've started making that content. That's like all my recommended. It's just like random like 300, 400, 500 view videos of founders just like building little products, some side projects. But I think net it's great, like building new products and learning and building that skill of like iteration is all like super valuable, I think.
For sure. And so we've been kind of teasing, your company, and we'll definitely get into it. I think the last thing I'd put before there is, Kind of help us walk us through, like, you got this mentor, you got this job, you're at the tail end of it. Where did this idea come from? How did you know you were leaving? And how did you end up on, this company versus anything else?
Yeah, that's great. So at launch, I knew I wanted to start a company. Like a couple of years in, I was always like even thinking of ideas. I didn't have an end date in mind. I never knew how long I would have stayed. I actually didn't think I would have stayed for 7 years, but there's a lot of exciting things that Jason and the company was working on. So I always had cool opportunities. But I probably like year 2 into the company, I was like just tinkering on different ideas. So I started launching different side projects, and Jason was aware of them. And I would just launch them on Twitter. So like first product was called Go Grateful, and it was a SMS based gratitude journal. So you would just get a reminder every morning or whatever frequency you set, asking what you're grateful for. You would text it back, and then you would get like a log on a web portal. Very basic, I called it like a tiny app because you didn't have to download a like App Store app, and it was just based in your SMS. So I was like playing around with those functions, and am non-technical, so it was like using a bunch of no-code tools to stitch that together. And that was like my first like product that I built out of nothing from scratch. And so throughout launch, I had the kind of inspiration from founders and seeing all these cool, interesting ideas where I could then just start building my own like either replica products or just like side projects that were inspired by something that
Presh, just to be clear, when you build that app, this is pre LLM, right? So you were like Googling and learning how to code. Is that right?
Yeah, it was brutal. I'm like, I wish, Cursor or, any like Replit agent, any of those products were out. I would have like shipped probably 10x what I actually did. But yeah, this was literally like Airtable, Zapier, Autopilot. Like it was probably like 5-6 tools. Now you could just get rid of all that and just, build it in Replit agent or something. But yeah, pre-LLMs, which is crazy because this is only like 2018, 2019.
You said you quit less than a year ago, so.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, like it's pretty incredible what's happened in the past year. But yeah, so first couple of years into working at launch, I was experimenting with these ideas, and in the back of my head, I just like my goal was actually like test as many different ideas while working at launch, and then if one thing gets traction, then I'll probably like have that conversation with Jason and the company and see what that looks like. So, a couple of years go by. I'm basically every year I'm trying to like launch a new product while working at launch as much as I can. And then basically about a year ago, I started, and so actually the theme of all these products were all related to health. And that was just like a core theme in my life because health and wellness was just like, I guess health and wellness, like tools and protocols were things that I had introduced and learned from just different YouTubers, and my mom as well, like got me early into meditation growing up. And so had exposure to this like whole wellness and breath work and meditation and gratitude journaling kind of world. And I would do that and always feel better when I did those things. And so I knew I wanted to build products that made people feel better. And through that feeling, of making people feel better, I was like, that makes me feel really good. And so I knew I wanted to build in health and wellness and didn't have the idea of what that would be. But again, kept launching different products. I launched this product called Go Polar, which was, I got big into contrast therapy, so cold plunging and saunaing, and wanted a simple tool to kind of track that experience and build a community around that. So I built this app called Go Polar, which just started as like a Apple Watch app. And then eventually we built an iOS app and launched that and got some early traction there. And that was like about a year and a half or a year ago. And from there, got some like organic traffic, which was cool. Saw people like regularly downloading it because they would search like cold plunge in the App Store or sauna in the App Store, and I would rank well. Had some blog posts do well. And so that was like, I was getting more into it and spending more like nights and weekends building on these products, but I still hadn't left launch at this time. So launched this product. Then I had another idea for a different app called Sunseek, which is in the App Store currently. And it's the initial idea was basically I moved from, and San Francisco has this issue too, which is like it's very cloudy. But when I moved from San Francisco to Toronto, it was like during the winter months, and it was like always cloudy, and I never knew where the sun was and was not getting much sun exposure. And through that, like, noticed my mood change and a lot of things change, and I just really missed the sun. And so wanted to experiment with this idea, which is what the app Sunseek is, which is how can we, well, one, like show you where the sun is, but two, like build the habit of going outside and getting your sun exposure even on a cloudy day, because you still get the photons of the sun through clouds, and you might just not feel that indoors because it's like very gray outside or very dull, and so that is not motivating to go outside, but maybe this app experience could help you do that. So that was kind of the thesis around Sunseek. So built a very like MVP scrappy app that just showed you where the sun is, and then launched that as well, also at launch, while working at launch. And then again, started getting some organic downloads and traffic and people using the app. So I was like, oh, okay, like people are starting to use these products. It's not a crazy amount. It's starting to generate a little bit of revenue, but again, nothing like crazy, nothing that told me still that I should probably like leave and pursue this full time, in terms of like a revenue number. But then what happened was I just started spending more time like iterating on the products, and that's what like ended up just consuming all my time, and all I wanted to think about was just building those products. And so I was like, okay, I'm doing a disservice here at my job if I'm not being present and doing good work at launch. So I knew at like that point when that happened, I had to go to Jason and just like have a conversation and like tell him what I'm feeling and what I hope to do and want to do. And at that conversation, I was super nervous at first. I remember texting Jason. I was like, hey, like got an exciting update. Can we schedule some time to meet? And he was like, the text is hilarious. He's like, yeah, of course. I have a feeling I know what this is about. And then he's like, let's schedule some time next week or something. And That's then awesome. From that, yeah, it was like, it was a nice message to receive. And then I remember putting together a little deck of like the ideas that I wanted to work on. And it wasn't like it wasn't a traditional pitch deck in the sense that like I had an ask for how much like money I wanted to raise or anything like that. It was just like a deck of the products that I wanted to work on, and then just like, let me share that to Jason and see what he says, with the intention of like working on these things full time. So that's what I did, like scheduled that call, got on, ran through this.
Wait, you deck. Skipped a section. What did he say? What was the feedback? Give us the...
Yeah. So, okay. So what was the feedback that like Jason said?
Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So he was like, so we got on this call and he's like, yeah, like I know exactly what this call is about. Like, tell me what you want to build. And so I was like, okay, so I have these ideas, which was Go Polar at the time, Sunseek, and I basically said I want to basically build a kind of wellness product studio where we build health and wellness products and try to make individual businesses out of them. We'll figure out which one sticks, and we'll kind of double down on whatever the winner is out of this like portfolio of apps. So it really was more compared to like a studio model. And I had the name at the time. So I told him like, I want to build this company called The Wellness Company. And it's a suite of products and experiences for helping humans live better. And so as soon as I told him that, he's like, this is excellent. I love this idea. He had seen the apps that I had already launched, which was Go Polar and version 1 of Sunseek at the time. And he had used the products and he said, this is cool. I can see the potential here. Obviously, wellness and health is like a growing thing. Cold plunge and sauna, I could see that, growing. I had done a little bit of research as well to kind of just paint the whole picture of why this might be interesting to work on. But again, didn't like intend on raising money. And then basically we get through the deck and we get through the whole like meeting. I go through my slides and it's just a really good back and forth conversation where he's throwing in ideas, I'm throwing in ideas, we're like sharing screens, and it was like a good back and forth. And then we get to the end and he's like, so what do you want to do? And I'm like, I want to start this company and I want to take a shot at, building something. And he's like, great, I think it's good. He's like, we'll invest if you want to raise some money. And I was like, oh, that's great, because I wasn't expecting that. And he said, just pick your last day. Hopefully you'll transition out in a couple months so you can train up whoever you need to hire and like, yeah, go try to build a company. So it was like incredible. It was probably best case scenario. having that conversation and kind of working there and building that relationship with Jason.
That's great. Obviously, your mentor wants to invest in your company over 7 years. It's going to feel good. I think the thing that sticks out for me though here a lot is it wasn't a revenue number. Of course, like a revenue number or a usage number would be great. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But what I'm really hearing is you just made a series of apps that you just needed to do the health things that you were doing, got consumed by the creation of them, and then just had to do them because you had to.
Yes.
I'm assuming usage and revenues got better, and I'd love to hear about it. But it's kind of interesting that, that it is that just like, I have to do this. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It was like, I just wanted to spend all my time doing this thing of building a product and building a company, getting users and talking to those users and doing all the things that I had seen everyone else do for the past 7 years. I was like, okay, the interesting part about it is running Founder University, which was like our very early stage program, which is where we're trying to find founders that just have like built things online and ship them and try to get them into this program to inspire them to start companies. I was seeing basically every day just random people throughout the world, because it was a remote program, that had just like built tiny projects that had started to generate revenue and they turned it into, a big business. And I would see that, like, I would basically get reminded of that daily and weekly and monthly working at launch. So I was like, I finally got to the point where I was like, okay, there's no reason I can't do the same thing. And that's what I wanted to do. So I was like, okay, seeing this firsthand, I got a little bit of the confidence that I could do this. And I'm like talking to these founders daily. So I was like, okay, why not do the same thing that I want to, pursue.
And you mentioned you have you mentioned you have a studio model. So I'm kind of curious, how much time have you put into a broader vision of what you're going to do? Or is it really, okay, I made the first app I need, the second app I need, and you're kind of thinking about that third idea or optimizing the first two? I'm just kind of curious, how much of it just is going as it naturally occurs, and how much is a grand vision?
Yeah, it's a great question. So right now, probably more on the point of still figuring out what the product is that we want to work on, or that will take up most of our time. So we've launched 2 apps, as you mentioned. We just launched this week another app, which we can get into as well. I haven't like publicly launched it, but it's in the App Store. Yeah, I can share an update on that maybe a bit later. The first 2 apps were like a cold plunge app and a sun app, very personal to me because I had these issues and problems that I wanted to solve. The way I think about the model right now is it has to be a problem that like either I deal with or have dealt with and or a solution that like I needed, just because I have a really hard time building for like anyone else that's like not me. Like I know other founders can do this like and do it really exceptionally well and like really study a market that they're maybe not even associated with. But for me personally, like it always had to be a problem that I dealt with. And then through that process, I'm like closer to the problem and get more inspired to build new features and scratching your own niche really. But to your point on the studio model, we're still trying to figure this out. I think like we want to launch as many apps as possible and treating it, I will say, I'm thinking of it more like making movies, which might sound weird. Like the whole movie concept of like a movie as an app and like launching different movies, and then maybe you'll have a breakout movie that does really well. And then from there you can build a bigger brand and business from that movie that broke out or app that broke out, for example. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about right now. I just say it's a studio just so I can experiment with, different products and whatever is exciting to me or whatever I see like there may be a trend going towards. That was really like the cold plunge sauna thing. I saw that trend and was part of that like community. So I was like, okay, let's try to build an experience here and see if we can do something there. So I think that's right now where I'm at. Broader vision, we're still trying to figure that out. I think it ends up being just based on like bandwidth and focus. Like we probably want to pick one app that we spend most of our time in, and we'll know what that is when we see kind of the data around it.
And are there any other studios or like founders that are kind of doing something similar that maybe inspired you to do this or you've seen success with? The first thing that comes to mind for me is maybe, Every. It feels like the same thing for keyboard warriors. Like, they have Spiral, which basically would turn this podcast into a LinkedIn post, or the reverse, or anything like that, just redoing all your copy for different places on social media. Then they have email. Then they have a thing to help you write if you write blog posts, just kind of all these things that a writer or a writer-esque person would kind of need. And it almost
Yeah.
feels like the same natural path. Like, I just needed this, so I just made it. And now we're calling it a company and we have these 4 products. So I'm curious if you kind of look outward, or it just was random.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely have seen or been inspired by some case studies. I think like even from the name, it's like the wellness company. So the browser company is kind of interesting in the sense that they had the one, main product, which is Arc, but like the kind of manifesto of the company was to build these like tools to make your experience online better. So I think that was like interesting, and now they're obviously working on the secondary product to Arc. So that I think played some inspiration. I also was like interested in the model of like just like buying or building businesses that are all kind of related, that you can build up a big enough brand for, and then it kind of serves as like an on-ramp, as you were saying, to different apps in the wellness company. So it's like everything we do is wellness related. You might start doing cold plunging and sauna and like contrast therapy, and so you may use Gold Polar for that. Then you may drop off that. You may do that for like 6 months. You may get into another thing, which is like doing your morning light routine or vitamin D exposure, all that stuff. And then you might get introduced to Sunseek. And we have that kind of suite of apps that you could just go and pick your protocol per se that, fits well with your routine. And then you have an experience for that. So I think that's probably what really inspired me, and where we'll end up going.
And you mentioned building these 2 apps because you're inspired by the problem. I mean, these are problems you have, and it's easy to be inspired by something that you want to exist in the world. In your time at launch, you work with a lot of founders. You said some of them have been successful working on problems that maybe they weren't super close to. Is there a clear difference? I guess, are most successful founders working on something they care about a lot, or is it really just finding the right market? You just have a lot of data points here, so I'm curious how you think about this.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it ends up being the founder really likes or cared about the problem so deeply that they're kind of their whole world revolves around that, even if they didn't experience the problem. So like the founders that I noticed that were successful, that didn't experience the problem, that were building for someone else or for a market that they had no business being with, they still cared so deeply about the end customer, the end user, and studied everything about that market. And they might as well have been that customer because they've studied them. The ones that have not been successful were probably the ones that didn't care as much, right? So I think it worked out where like you cared very deeply about the customer, but you're maybe not the end user or customer, the problem that's being solved, you could still build a successful business. And I always turn back to, there's like this famous Steve Jobs line of like, you have to love it so much because it ends up being so hard that if you didn't love it that much, you just would give up naturally. So I always revert back to that because it's like so true. It's so easy to just, drop whatever you don't care about.
Okay.
I've seen, I guess, I am curious what your third app is. But before you get there, I was just reminded of like, this app Cal AI and how it just completely exploded. Like, are there lessons for you
Crazy.
to take away from it? And I'm honestly, I haven't used the app. I just keep hearing about it. So, if you could tell us kind of what it is, why you think it blew up, and what you could take away from that.
Yeah. So Cal AI is this calorie tracker app on your iPhone. I think they're only iPhone only. Maybe they have Android, but basically it's a simple product where you take a photo of your food and you get a caloric breakdown and macro breakdown of what the image sees. And it's just, they're probably using like OpenAI to visualize the food on your plate and give you an estimation. They package that really nicely into a nice app. And the kind of behemoth app that they're going up against is MyFitnessPal, which, spits off like tens of millions of dollars. And they basically cracked distribution the best from what I've seen on like mobile apps. So the app works great, but it's not an exceptional product or not a revolutionary product. And I think the founders would say the same. But what they did really well was they kind of dominated short form content and Instagram and TikTok influencers posting content about the product. And through that, they had so much virality with the product and just making content, because it's like a fun product to kind of use and make a video around, because you basically take your phone, you take a picture, and you get a output of caloric breakdown of your food. So it's kind of like visually pleasing to see content like that. And then you can also see the like before and after like body photos, which are always kind of viral. And so there's a lot of things with the product that are just viral naturally, but also they really doubled down on making really good content through these like UGC creators and influencers. So I think that was like the edge. The founders have a good podcast that I listened to talking about their whole like distribution angle and strategy that I think is really, really helpful for any consumer app, or even just like founder in general. I think you could probably replicate that for most businesses.
And is there anything specific that maybe you've implemented and you could tell us like how it went?
Yeah. So from the short form stuff, I think one thing that's really worked, which is, and I haven't cracked it yet, but I've seen like I've run a couple experiments through GoPolar and Sunseek right now with them and have generated like hundreds of downloads. Haven't had a viral video yet to generate the like tens of thousands of downloads that CalAI and some of these other apps have done yet, but I think we'll get there. Just it's kind of like an iteration game, just like building product. But one thing specifically was just searching on TikTok or on Instagram for whatever your product is or kind of the outcome of the product. So an example of that, it could be for Sunseek, for example. Our app will basically, if you get morning light exposure and a proper light diet, you can improve your sleep, right? So I just searched sleep on TikTok or sleep habits or like better sleep, just different phrases on TikTok search. And I would get a bunch of content in that people had made with these words in them. And it ranges from like big creators to small creators, and you can filter by relevance and by the view count. And TikTok's got a good kind of search system in place. So search whatever phrase. In that case, I searched sleep hacks, sleep better, all that stuff. And then I would find different creators, and then I would reach out to them through either TikTok or getting them on Instagram. So I'd reach out to them and basically ask them if they'd be interested, or tell them about my app that we just launched and why I'm excited about it and how I think it might be fit well with their audience if they talk about it or get their audience on it. And basically pitch them to want to do a deal where they make a couple videos for us talking about Sunseek in an organic way where it doesn't seem like an ad. I think that's like one of the key pieces also with CalAI. It's like none of these videos that went viral were talking about the product. It was like showing the product and then showing the outcome and people getting inspired by that and then wanting to download the product as a byproduct of seeing that.
And when you're when you're doing these deals, are you saying, let me give you revenue share? It's really hard to do attribution, I imagine. How do you make it work for them?
Yeah. So all the deals that I've done have always been like just like cash for X amount of videos or cash for X amount of views. The views piece, I've learned that the views piece is better if you kind of structure it where you want a certain amount of views, organic views from that creator, because then it's less of just because it's very inconsistent, the platform, or depending on the creator, it could be, they could have a 500 view video or a 50,000 view video. And that could just vary consistently throughout TikTok, right? So I think for me, I've learned more to try to structure these deals more of like revenue or pay them for X amount of videos with X amount of view counts. And if it doesn't get there, then they'll just like keep reposting or keep creating new content.
Yeah.
Until you get to that view count.
Oh, very cool.
Have you, I guess what I'm asking, are there companies that facilitate this or try to? I feel like there was one back in launch forever ago. Maybe I shouldn't say the name, but there have been companies since then too that have tried to like facilitate this or become a middleman. You're telling me you're reaching out directly. Everyone I know who is trying to do short form content is definitely reaching out directly too. So that tells me maybe it's not working, but I'm curious what you think about that whole space because obviously something is happening here.
Yes, it's funny bring that up because I just got introduced to a product called Posted. And what Posted is doing is founded by this guy who created a vaping app and got it to like 40K MRR. And he basically followed the same thing that Calai did, which was working with these micro creators and influencers and structuring deals. And basically built that company up to 40K and then 40K MRR and then ended up selling it. But through that process, he learned how hard it is to manage all these creators and try to find winning content. And through that process created this product called Posted, which basically the idea, we'll see if it works. It's kind of interesting. I'm about to run an experiment with them actually, so I can follow up and tell you how it goes. But basically what they do is you basically launch a contest and you put a budget, whether it's like $1,000 or $5,000 or $10,000, you pick the budget and you can, and then you make a brief of the campaign that you want to launch. So I'll run an example of Sunseek. So I want to find health creators or just make health content, health related content that shows and talks about Sunseek product, right? And I'll throw in examples of high performing assets that have worked well in the past. So I'll launch that campaign and I'll put a budget of $1,000. And let's say I'm gonna distribute that 1,000 to 10 winners, and those 10 winners will get $100 each. And so what Posted does is they take that campaign, they have a huge kind of database of creators, active creators, and they send it out to their creators, and then their creators start making content for this creative brief that I just sent. And whichever view they pick, whichever view count gets in the like top 10 out of whoever applies to that, they'll just distribute the $100. So you'll get like 30, 40 videos, and out of those 30, 40 videos, the top 10 will get the money. So it's kind of like a gamified version of that. We'll see how well it works and if the content is good. But I think ideas like that are kind of interesting because it really does solve a problem, and if it works, then it's a way better process than going on these platforms and like trying to individually find these creators to work out deals. I think the benefit of doing the manual work of searching and finding these creators is you can build a relationship with a potentially really good partner, and you don't need 100 influencers. You just need like 2, 3 like really good accounts. One of my friend is generating they did like 200K in revenue last month, and they just work with like, I think he said 3 or 5 creators regularly posting like 3 to 4 pieces of content a month. So I think that can also work.
Yeah, it's definitely it's an interesting space. So I'm curious how that goes for you. And just to talk my book for a second, I saw this interesting company called Daisy. We are investors in it, but it's interesting only because they are trying to incentivize at a much more micro level. So they're all micro influencers, like definitely under the 1 million followers, but they're also trying to they incentivize them to interact with posts. So it's kind of like get replies on a tweet, get comments on TikTok, get likes rather than making the content. And they've actually seen like really good boosting, and it's like immediate. And it's interesting because it feels like it's the last thing that the algorithm will be able to fight, because it is just a random group of high signal accounts like, oh, this is awesome, like commenting during a live stream, which will really improve kind of the output. So it's kind of a funny hack. My negative take on it is I don't know how long it'll last and if it'll kind of get shut down by the algorithm. But on the other side, it is performing quite well while the loophole is there.
That's great. What's the domain? I'd love to check it out.
It's daisypay.
Okay, cool. I'll check it out. That's great. So basically, you create a content and then they kind of help boost it organically.
Correct. So you're paying for boosting, not for content. So this would go in line with what you're already doing rather than replace it.
Right. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'm also experimenting with like a bunch of organic stuff. Haven't cracked the code on that yet, but I think this would be cool to just like try out and see. I know a lot of it's like high quality content. Like I always hear high quality content, but I've seen like very non high quality content do exceptionally well. So
I feel like some of it is just volume, but then there is like an art to making like low budget crap that goes viral. Yeah, right? Like it's not so easy.
I think so.
We'd all be doing it.
I'll say, I accidentally become a little bit of a celebrity sometimes. I'm in like a guy who shoots videos at the office. My tech CEO, have you seen his videos at all?
Yes, yes, love those. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
hilarious.
like a regular actor in his videos now, and I'll say that the biggest one we did, this might be the biggest one on his channel, did 2.4 million, and we shot it in like 45 seconds, and it was just it was a response to the DeepSeek thing. He timed it
Oh,
like 2 hours after the DeepSeek thing happened. He comes over, he's like, "Hey, can you help me real quick? We're gonna shoot something." And because it was so topical, everyone watched the video.
yeah.
It was not a good video. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it was we literally made it in like a minute. So I think a lot of the algorithm really is like, how do you capture people's attention for whatever reason? Even if it's a bad video,
Mm.
it's like if there's an attention component, I know watch count or watch percentage is like some huge part of what the algorithm decides makes something matter. So that's my opinion of how garbage can go viral sometimes.
Yeah, that's a really good insight. Yeah, the anything that's interesting, basically, and it can be random pieces of
Random,
content,
low quality, but
low quality.
captivating.
Yeah,
It's the 45-second production time, right? That allows him
yeah,
to be on trend. Otherwise,
Yeah,
you'd be too
exactly.
far
right.
behind.
Exactly.
To get a little bit back to the apps, unless you have anything else, Jack, I'm kind of curious. So when it comes to these different health protocols, are you more focused on the people who are already doing them, or are you also just trying to convince people to start doing them? Because obviously both would help you.
Yes, great question. I want to focus more on getting people into them, and that that includes like a educational component, because they're like not mainstream, other than if you're in the industry or like world of doing these health and wellness protocols, right? So a good example of that is the Sunseek app, which is, I think a lot of people who follow Andrew Huberman probably know this because he talks about it a lot. But anyone outside of that world, it's not as talked about, right? And so, and that audience also tends to kind of skew like tech as well, or tech or like knowledge worker, podcast listener, all those kind of people. But I really want to do more education around getting new people in and making the apps like super simple. That's why Sunseek is like a very simple, like one action app that you can do multiple things in it. But the idea is educate and build a habit for people that don't know about this wellness protocol or health protocol.
Yeah, I think my take on marketing. So I was a founder, then I got a job as a marketer at a really small company, and that like was a great little crucible in different marketing strategies. And I think especially with the TikTok marketing, you really need to nail people's sort of latent problems. So for example, not sleeping enough is something everybody like latently deals with. Like everyone has a bad night of sleep every once in a while or all the time. And on those kinds of problems, TikTok is super effective because you're passively looking to solve that problem. You don't really even realize you have the problem, but it's like a trigger word. It's like you say it and people are like, "Wait, I sleep like shit sometimes." So
Right.
that's how I think about the sort of like, depending on your app, if you have a problem that everybody has a little bit, perfect social media marketing makes a ton of sense. Versus if maybe you're a problem that's very specific, then it's like social media might be the worst way to market because it's so much flyby that doesn't matter. And so you want to do something a little more active like Google, where people are actively searching to solve the problem.
So true.
Just my 2 cents.
So true. I like have a great example of that with just the two products that we launched. GoPolar and Sunseek are like two different products in that sense. Both what you just said. Sunseek can solve that sleeping problem, let's say, focus problem. GoPolar, very specific to people who already do that thing of cold plunging or sauna. And so I actually just like looked at our data, not all, but like close to 50% of our downloads come from Google search because people are searching for cold plunge tracker or whatever, and they land on our blog. For Sunseek, it's way more social driven, and like TikTok as a referral source, for example. It's also easier to make content for Sunseek because there's not a lot of friction, like getting into a cold tub or doing a sauna and having access to that. There's a lot of friction, obviously, that goes along with that. So it's cool that you said that because like both of the apps, I'm just like, experiencing that firsthand, and they're both like different problems to solve. So it's super interesting.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Could you convince us kind of why we should be not out, The app isn't like go touch grass. I realize it's much more complicated. It's more complicated. It's specific of, getting sun at the right time. Could you kind of convince us on that? The reason I'm skipping to that is I'm not cold plunging. I've tried it like three or
Yeah.
four times. I just hate it. I don't want to tell you.
Yeah.
It's just not for me, so I won't be sold. If you want to dig into that, that's fine. I don't know if Jack has an opinion, but I'm curious if you could just sell us on kind of Sunseek, what the app does and why me and Jack should be doing this right now.
Yeah, totally. So Sunseek, basically the idea is around light exposure and a light diet. So the way our bodies work is through this thing called the kind of circadian clock, sorry. And it's when you have light exposure, your brain gets activated and you kind of increase your cortisol and you're more alert. And so through that process, basically the best way to do that is getting natural sunlight. You could do things like get a lux lamp, or they're called SAD lamps, and they have like 10,000 lux, and it's very bright. You put that on in the morning, you'll feel more awake and energized. But the best and natural way to do it is go outside in the morning. And the way it works is you want to do it within the first couple hours of waking up. So if you wake up at 8, you want to have your morning light exposure before 11. And the reason for that is you're going to wake yourself up. Again, the functions that happen inside your body, your cortisol increases, your melatonin decreases, and through that process, you're waking up. And so light is super important to that. Similar to nighttime, right? You want not bright lights. You want to lower your light intensity because you want to trigger a melatonin release to get ready for bed. So light is super important. The app Sunseek helps you build the habit and visualize when that happens from your kind of wake up time and sleep time. So we just introduced this thing called the body clock, where you can visualize, you put in your sleep time, you put in your wake time, or it could be like aspirational too. So if you want to wake up earlier, put your aspiring wake up time, and then we'll show you when you should be getting that light in the morning, when you should be doing a morning workout, for example. When you should be reducing your light in the evening, all that stuff, just easier to visualize. And then the app helps you track it. So you can basically track it a couple of ways, where you either are going out for a walk or a run, or just like going outside and like sitting. We have like a sit and soak feature where if you're in your backyard or something, you just go and put that on. And really it's like, I think of it similar to like fasting. There's this app that's really popular and famous called Zero. And it's a simple app. It literally just helps you build a fasting practice and helps you stay accountable to that. It's like a timer interface. The app was first like designed and built by Kevin Rose, and it's a very simple app, and they're doing incredibly well, millions in revenue. But what they did was a very simple app that helped you build the habit of intermittent fasting, and through that process, they help their customers lose weight and help them be more focused. And that's kind of what we want to do with Sunseek. So build that habit of getting your light exposure. Through that process, you will likely sleep better and likely be more focused throughout the day, and help you just like build that wellness protocol. So yeah, that's Sunseek.
And maybe this is a dumb question. If someone like aspirationally wanted to wake up at 4:30 or 5 for whatever reason, like the sun isn't out, so what is the app going to tell them to do?
Yeah, so in that case, basically what you need is like one of these like sad lamps. I have one here, actually. I can show you. It's like, I have a huge one, which I can show you. This is like a massive one.
Okay.
And it's on, and I have it on because I have it on right now just because I'm like working and wanted to stay awake, even though it's like later for me in the day. But I'll regularly, like, if I want to have a focus session, I'll like turn on the bright light, and then I have like lowered my chance of feeling tired.
I'm curious. So obviously when you're in the morning, you turn it on to wake yourself up. It seems like I have to imagine there's also an effect where your body starts like a stopwatch, almost like, okay, it's light right now. In 14 hours, we're going to go to bed again. Is that
Yes.
so? And then also when you use it at 7:39 p.m. your time, are you messing with the stopwatch?
Yes. So I definitely am messing with the stopwatch by having it on right now.
Okay.
But it's like, in this case, it's intentional. I'm like probably going to do a work for a couple hours after this. So it works out. But yeah, that first, exactly what you said, that first exposure to light is going to set that like wake up time. And then also that sleep time when your body should be preparing for nighttime. So that's why the kind of most important light is the light that you get in the morning, because that's going to also set the clock for when you should be going to bed.
Okay, very cool.
What is the difference between the lights and the sun? And like, do you know? And I ask because like I know lights are, but they're extremely popular in Alaska, right? Because there's just large swaths of time that don't have light. And actually, I got one at 1.2. It was 100% after listening to a Huberman podcast, and it was a time where Maya was waking. He sleeps now through the night, but when he was waking up every 3 hours, we worked in shifts, and I just had to be up at like 4:30, and so I just used one of those lights, and it totally worked. But it's honestly kind of scary if it's like pitch black outside and you just have this little rectangle that's like as bright as the sun, and it's like, oh, I'm supposed to look at this for like 15 seconds or something. But it it 100% worked. Like there's no questions that worked. I found it very weird, and I don't use it anymore because I'm not up at that time, and I'm a pretty early riser anyways. But do you know, like, yeah, what is the kind of difference between that or just getting natural sun?
Yeah. So I think it's just like the intensity of that light. Like it only really works on those lights that are, I think, 10,000 or more lux. And I think that's like the minimum that where you can consider it a kind of SAD or happy lamp. The interesting piece of that is like, it's so intense. You don't get that from any regular like over the head lights that you have in your house. It's very specific, very intense, not like pleasant to look at directly. That's why you kind of usually have it like to the side or to the off of your, maybe put to the side of your desk or something. You're not like directly staring at it because it's so intense. Alternately, like going outside and looking at the sun, you'll get the same, generally like even through full cloud cover, you'll get like 5, 10, 15,000 lux. So just as much as you would get from the SAD lamp or lux lamp. It's just the sun is, incredibly more powerful. That's why. But the SAD lamp is super effective when you, like you said, when the sun isn't out and if you're trying to wake up early and set your clock. The thing I have heard Huberman talk a lot about is also even when you do that in the morning, like let's say you're a 4:30 a.m. You're waking up at 4:30 a.m. You do the SAD lamp thing to wake you up. I've heard him say, and some studies point to still going outside when the sun rises, just to, again, fine tune and adjust your body clock to that natural sunlight exposure. And then you'll still have that same response of going to bed at the 12 to 14 hours later. But yeah, that's kind of what I've seen work so far. And I use, the reason I have a SAD lamp is because I live in Toronto and the winters from like December to end of February are very gray in the morning. And so I'll just naturally just have that on in the first couple hours of the day, just even if I haven't gone outside, just because it's like super cold or very gray, I'll just turn that on and then like go out in the afternoon, for example.
Is this why like kind of foggy, rainy days are always shitty days? Like if we just all use these lamps, would it counteract most of that? Or is it also being trapped indoors? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if there's like a study, but I'd be curious to like do a like little experiment of that, of like rainy days and using the SAD lamp. But I definitely feel that like rainy days or gray days, super cloud cover days, just like uninspiring to go outside if you don't have to. And I mostly don't have to because I'm working from like home most of the time. And the light has just like been super effective for that reason.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so I want to hear about the third app. I guess, you brought up Zero, so I'll talk a little bit about it. Intermittent fasting for me was a lifestyle for a long time. I think over 6 years. I did a 17-hour fast.
Wow. Every day.
And every day. I absolutely loved it. It was long enough that people were like, oh yeah, Karthik's not eating again, or some whatever. Like that people would be annoyed by it. And so, but it was amazing. I felt so mentally sharp, like the abs come out, there's so much like good to it that it was an amazing lifestyle. I think what changed it for me was a couple things. I mean, I just got more and more into lifting over probably the past 5 years. And I know it's possible to do both, but I have like a remarkably small appetite, I would say, for like my size. And so to skip a meal, to fast 17 hours, and then to also get whatever, 200 grams of protein or whatever it is incredibly hard if you want to enjoy any part of consumption. And so I kind of just got rid of it just to start lifting more, bulk up a little bit more. And it's definitely worked. Like, yeah, obviously eating more works. But that app sucks now. I mean, it was very, very good in the beginning. And I don't know, like maybe Kevin Rose has stepped away. It's just visually worse.
It's
like
bloated,
every time
right?
it gets updated, it looks terrible and looks worse and worse. It doesn't work. And it's gotten to the point where I was like, do I just use AI to make a Swift app? Like, I just want a ring and just tell me when I'm getting closer to the fast, how much is left, and finish. I don't need to be inspired. I don't need an app purchase. Obviously, I get there trying to make money. I get that. I just want a ring that close. So I'm teeing this up to hope that you're gonna do something about this.
Yeah, Presh, this is it.
But
I love it. Yeah. I agree with you. I think like there's so much like content and so much just like bloat in the app. I think that naturally happened. Like they also are VC backed, and so I think had to go down certain directions. And back to our early discussions, like that's gonna lead you to decision making that may not be the best for the customer experience or user experience, right? So I agree with you. I also don't use Zero anymore. I will use it actually if I'm doing like an extended fast, like a 72 hour, 72 hour or more. But other than that, like the daily fast app, won't use anything anymore. But also had like a 250-day streak during the pandemic, would use it a lot, and it was great. But yeah, I agree. I think there's like these simple apps that just do one thing really, really well. Maybe they're even like one-time payments are starting to pop off more, because I think people are like sick of in-app subscriptions or recurring payments for these things. So even like I want to test something of just like, when's the last time you bought an app that was like $2, just priced $2, or like $4 or $5, even $10 just in the app store? It's just like a one-time payment though, and now you have the app. Like I haven't done that in a long time.
I think I have, but the funny part is you never remember what these apps are. So there's something there too, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Let me think. Okay, no, there's one.
You're probably true.
There's a local LLM app called Astro, I think. That may or may not be the name. It was $2 or $5 or something. And basically, the new Apple chips are pretty good at inference. So it's like, well, for me, this is like a pocket knife. Like no internet, something terrible happens, whatever. I have an LLM that I can talk to. And I think that's cool. I've used the app once and I paid $5 for it. So there's something in that. I don't know what it is.
So I'll say I had a Whoop for probably 2 years. And that was like, it's like 20 or 30 bucks a month now. It was like, okay, I don't need this that much. Granted, I got a lot from it, but 20, 30 bucks. So I got an Apple Watch. I spent $700 one time or whatever it was. But then there's this app Bevel that goes with it. It does everything the Whoop does. It's like $30 one-time payment. And it was, it's beautiful. Because I mean, over time, I'll hopefully recapture the cost. And I think that was a direct response to Whoop being $30 a month. So it works in that way. And I am fatigued by subscriptions. But I can't say, like, if your market weren't people who are pissed off about a monthly subscription, I don't know if it would work, to Karthik's point.
Yeah. That's super interesting. I also have tried out Bevel. I tried out Whoop and Bevel, and I agree. I think like Bevel paired with an Apple Watch is like a great experience because you get like the same data, which is super cool. But one thing that's like interesting with the paid apps that I've noticed, because paid apps are so like not as common as free apps, obviously, you can rank easier in app stores if you just get an initial spike of like a couple hundred downloads on like day one versus like the tens of thousands that you would need on the free. So there's this app that I tried out. I forget it's like one of those again, similar to your point, Karthik, I don't know the name of it, but I'll tell you the idea of it. It basically tells you your time, how much time you have left in the month, the year, in your overall life, right? There's like a famous blog by Tim Urban where he talks about this concept of like visualizing how much time you have left, right? So there's a simple like paid app that launched a couple of weeks ago, and they priced it at like $7 or something, or $6.99 in the App Store, and they got up to like the top 100 paid app list, and it didn't go like super viral. It was just on like tech Twitter, but because it was a paid app, it had that initial spike.
Can you change? Yeah. Can you do that and then switch?
and then switch to I think you
Subscription.
could. I think you actually could because
It's not a bad
yeah, I'm
idea.
pretty sure. Yeah, I
You get a lot
I
of
kinda
death
should
threats,
just
but
test that.
yeah,
And are you guys
it'll,
talking
it'll
about,
fast.
are you guys talking about Bevel Health and Performance? Is that the app?
Yeah.
Because that
think
is
so,
that
yeah.
is monthly and annual now. Just FYI,
Oh,
it's
I think that,
$6 a month or $50 a year.
oh, I thought it was a one time. Okay, so I'm just a sucker. Is what I can't read, and I'm a sucker.
Okay. All right. So we're an hour and 15 minutes in. Perfect time for the exclusive. Presh, what is the third app?
Oh yeah. Okay. So third app is it's called Posture AI, and you can kind
Okay.
of guess what it is. It's simple app that is on your iPhone. You'll take a front facing picture of yourself and a side picture. The app will do it automatically, so you don't need to actually take a photo. You just put your phone down. It'll take that and give you a comprehensive report of your posture, and you'll see like deviations of your kind of shoulders, your hips, your knees. On the side angle, you'll see your head tilt, how much your head weighs, and how much it should weigh. Which, if you're on like a computer, naturally like your head leans forward. Mine does at least. And so
Yeah.
it gives you the idea for the app is it gives you a nice report, comprehensive report that you can understand, and then through that gives you exercises and mobility workouts that you can do to correct that imbalance that you might have. So that's the app. It's in the App Store actually right now, but we're launching it with, I won't say who, but we're working with the kind of posture mobility expert who I found on TikTok and has a quite a large audience, and so we're trying to launch it with that creator and see how it does. I think it'll be more viral than the other two apps, just because, again, back to that like acute problem of like bad posture, poor posture that you mentioned, Jack, with the comparison to sleep. Like everyone who works at like a desk or like looks at themselves can see their posture. So this will give you a more visual thing. So yeah, that's Posture AI. The V1 just includes like taking a report, and we have I filmed some content with my local chiropractor of different exercises, and then we'll eventually turn that into like a little program inside the app where if you have like poor posture, we'll give you like 30 days that you can follow this dedicated program based on the imbalances that you have, and just follow it, and you'll by the end of it likely feel better and have better posture.
That's cool. So it sounds like maybe this one, were you looking for a new idea or were you trying to improve your posture?
Yeah, great question. So this one again was still super personal because I was in a period in the summer where I kept tweaking my neck, and it was just a combination of like poor posture, not doing like proper strength training, or not doing any strength training really. I would just like run a lot and do some sort of stretches, but always like messed up my neck or back somehow. And it always was a result of one, poor posture, and not doing these like corrective movements that I should have been doing while like running a lot basically. So it still came from a place where I experienced that, but I was at the same time still thinking of more of like problem to solve that could be a larger market, and where there are competitors, but where we might be able to build a better experience as well. So whereas I didn't really look at that with the first two apps, those were, Sunseek was more of like a new product idea. Nothing really existed like that specifically in the App Store, and it was more so like a lot of education needing to be around that. I still think it's a interesting product and has got opportunity and potential, but there is more education around that versus this is like, okay, in the name Posture AI, you kind of already know what it's going to do. And there's less education around that, less need for education around that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's exciting. I mean, so, you're obviously obsessed with wellness. You have the wellness company. You're launching 3 apps now. What are maybe some other things? Some people call it alternative medicine, but just kind of these more out there things that the average person isn't doing, whether it's like a gadget or a different protocol you have. Maybe kind of talk to some of the things you're doing in your own life, and that maybe we're going to see an app, later in the year.
Yeah. Yeah, I love, similar to you, I know, Karthik, that's like one of the things we like talking about is these different like health and wellness like protocols. So I want to hear yours as well, Karthik and Jack, what you guys are doing. But for me right now, I'm trying to do more things around sleep, and you hear it a lot if you follow Huberman, Brian Johnson, and all these guys talking about sleep being the number one thing. I've never really prioritized sleep because I've always liked working on my computer, and people who like working on their computer generally like stay late up into the night and pretty much have like irregular sleep schedules. It's hilarious. I don't know if you've seen like Mark Andreessen and Huberman, like their interactions on Twitter are kind of hilarious because Mark has like a lot of bad habits and Huberman's always like trying to correct him. They're like they're friends, I'm pretty sure, but it's funny to see their back and forth. Anyways, sleep is something that I'm like trying to do more intentional things around. And so I've been doing two things. Like one, it's like full blackout, so no light, which means I have to wear a eye mask. And I use this fancy one, but you don't need a fancy one. There's like simple ones on Amazon for $20, but I use this one called the Therabody mask or something, and it's got like a vibration mechanism on it where I actually don't use that too often, but if I'm like kind of wired and like needing to fall asleep quickly, I'll notice I'll put that vibration on and it's like full blackout, and I will definitely fall asleep and just have a more restful sleep. I've just noticed just through like tracking it through the Aura Ring. So the Therapody one does a really good job of just like blackout and also some like vibrations through it. So I've been enjoying that product a lot. I've been using it for the past like 3-4 months, and it's really good. But the blackout, I don't know if you guys have used any eye masks before, but it's like super key for me. I pretty much go to sleep every night now with it on.
I do blackout curtains. I found a
Okay.
similar thing.
Yeah.
I own the place, so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna make it a sleep chamber.
Nice.
Yeah, sleep for me. I've always been a really early riser, which has been weird because I'm like a software founder. So I wake up at like 5:30 naturally, and no matter when I go to bed, so I have to go to bed at like 9:30 or 10 every night. So over the summer, it's like it's non-negotiable that I get blackout curtains. But yeah, otherwise nothing too crazy. Like I've tried fasting in the past. But to Karthik's point, I've been doing weightlifting for the last 15 years, and it's just like if I work out in the morning, which is when I like to work out, and then I just don't have protein for 8 hours, it's tough. But yeah, those are like the two big things for me is just sleep enough. I try not to eat anything processed anymore. I don't know. Do you guys feel this way? When I eat processed food, I feel horrible. I don't know if the food got worse or I'm just not used to it anymore, but like I feel like I have the flu when I eat a lot of food these days.
Yeah, I mean,
I-
100%.
yeah.
For me right now, I'm just trying to get honestly back to a lot of my health stuff. You know, I have a 1.5-year-old son who, which I'll edit. I'll edit in post. We're just getting a place where he's sleeping. We have like more of a schedule, but it's obviously very different now. And just kind of just doing like healthy things again, like eating better, taking time to cook, sleeping better. Because you got to a point where it's like, oh, I'm usually eating at like 8 or 9 now by the time I'm alone and he's asleep and I can cook, but I know that's terrible. I like to eat at like 6. I'll sleep 100 times better. So it's really trying to bring those things back to my life more than anything else, because like sleep is super important, because now I guess Jack is naturally waking up at 5:30. I'm waking up at 6 every morning because he's getting up. So it's really not a choice. So the same thing is like whether I'm tired or not, I have to sleep at 10 to have a good day, which can't always happen. And so I am thinking a lot more about sleep. For the processed food thing, I guess it's kind of obvious, but I've noticed we've been ordering a lot more because we just haven't had time to cook. Me and Rue just decided, hey, we're just no DoorDash on weekdays. Let's just see if we can pull this off for a month. And it's so funny thinking about that. Like, I don't know how you guys like grew up or whatever. DoorDash wasn't out back then, so that's obviously why that's a terrible example. But it's kind of insane. I felt incredible. I slept better. We cooked every meal, almost 100% of the meals. Maybe a couple we went out and like we walked and went out and ate somewhere instead of ordering it. But yeah, I felt it's like a night and day difference.
It's funny. So growing up, I had really, really bad OCD growing up, like to the point where like I had to wipe myself off anytime anyone like breathed audibly. Like it was bad. And I remember, so I grew up like very middle class. Like we had Jack in the Box or Little Caesars for almost every night for dinner. Like truly, like I ate garbage for 18 straight years, and my OCD was really bad. When I went to college, it got really like a lot better, and I thought it was testosterone or something. I'm like, oh, I grew out of it. Last week I was traveling for work. We had going to see a customer, and so I was eating a lot of like junk food, and I felt like 14-year-old me. Like I'm like paranoid about things. When people are clicking their pen, I like have to restart what I'm doing. It's like, oh man, this was just the food the whole time. It's super interesting.
It's really powerful. I think like what you put into your body and like the output of that, right? And same with just like sleep as well. It's like these core things of like what you eat, sleeping well, exercising are like really probably the foundation of just good
That's all
health,
you
right?
need. But yeah, if any of the table legs are gone, you got a wobbly table.
Yeah, exactly.
I know you maybe wanted a more out there one. I actually use so I started like balding. I mean I have hair now. But I started like balding like at the crown like quite a bit. Like it was getting bad and I was getting worried. I tried like normal stuff. So I tried Hims, which I think is like finasteride and like other stuff. Then I started Googling like that finasteride, like, you're not a man anymore if you have enough finasteride or whatever. And so I was like, oh wow, this is like a problem. And then I started reading the labels. Yeah, if there's someone pregnant in your house, if there's all these things around where it's like this is fucking with your hormones, there's all these warning labels. And I actually realized, wow, I actually am feeling kind of low energy. I assumed it was the kid or sleep or something. And I think it's mostly those. But yeah, I just cut out this spray and I had all this energy back. And I was like, wow, that was bullshit. And I'm kind of mad they gave this to me. But then I still needed to do something because it was kind of working. I would say it paused my hair loss rather than like regrowing my hair, which was something. I actually got one of those red light laser hats. The thing that convinced me, I always thought it was bullshit, and maybe it still is. I don't know. But, Brian Johnson does a video where like he uses that. But I also know that's probably 1% of what he does. So it's hard to say the hat's going to do it. But the hat was okay. The company he uses has hats from like 800 to like 2,500. I found one for $400, which is still like stupid. It's like a light, like,
and it's like how does it work? You just put
wear
it
it like a baseball hat, and it
Yeah.
has an array of red light lasers, and you wear it for I think 10 minutes at a time, and it automatically shuts off. And I've been using that for maybe 2 to 3 months. It's working. I don't know what else to say. Like, it's not crazy. The hair in the front of my hair is like more than it is back there, but there isn't a spot anymore. So
Whoa.
that's kind of a crazy one that
That's
I would
cool.
say if you've tried all the other stuff, you may as well try it. This can't hurt. It can hurt my
Yeah.
wallet and it can make me look stupid, but it's not going to lower my energy levels or something. It's just light. So that's a pretty interesting one that worked for me.
Yeah, that's really interesting. What's the company?
I got one from a company called Higher Dose.
Oh, okay. Nice. They make like saunas as well, right?
Yes,
Or like,
I also got one of those. I did not hear the end of it from Rue. It's like a sack. It's like a sack that you sleep in. It's shit. That I gave it 0
it's not
out of
good?
10 stars. I returned it immediately. I mean, it was so stupid. Imagine like a mat and then like it's another mat on top and you zip it closed and it's just like infrared or whatever for heat. And you just get really hot. And it's supposed to be cool, like steam, wood, like you feel good.
You're like asleep.
I'm like
a sleeping
really
bag.
hot in a plastic bag. So forget about microplastics. I'm fucked. You know what I mean? Like, it was so lame. Rue made fun of me the entire time, and it did nothing, and I returned it immediately. And it doesn't even get that hot. So sorry, Higher Dose. Like 1 for 2. Okay, 1 for 2.
1 for 2.
1 for 2.
I thought about this red light thing. So I have alopecia. I have just a bunch of problems. I'm realizing I have alopecia. So I lost my hair in like 2 months. And I actually tried finasteride and minoxidil, and the doctor's like, this shit's not going to do anything. And it didn't. It just fucked with my hormones. I did feel weird on those, though. I did feel super weird on the minoxidil, actually. I don't know if you used it, but it made me feel like just like a bitch. Like I was on a date and I would like be in my head the whole time because it raises your heart rate a little bit. And so I think it just like made me think I was in fight or flight all the time. But I got a biopsy recently because they were like, you've been on every medication on the market for alopecia. None of them worked. Let's do a biopsy, make sure you're not just bald and you just like didn't speed run balding. And it turns out I have alopecia. And one thing they recommended is red light therapy. So I feel like I'm red pilled on it now. I feel like I have to.
Oh, you never tried it?
I never tried it because I tried all the chemical ones. So I'll give it a shot. I'll give it a shot.
Nice.
That's cool. I've never also tried the red light stuff. There's like
what the hell are you gonna do with it?
Well, there's like there's like good like skin stuff, I think.
Yeah, my sister-in-law uses it for her face, and she said she really likes it. So
the girl across the street, she walks around with that shit in her room all the time. It's just like glowing in the dark. I'm like, what is like? Is there phantom in your apartment? That's good.
That's hilarious. They have like these like full body ones. I don't know if you've seen those. They're like huge panels that you can just stand in front of.
Yeah,
Very
like they,
interesting.
I think yeah, Johnson has the one that's like a big like a trifold mirror, and you just sit in front of it,
Yeah.
like in your boxers or in the nude or whatever.
Yeah.
But okay, Pressure, you actually wrote the CO2 monitor, the RNet one. I see this
Oh,
on Twitter
yes.
every week for
Yeah.
forever since I've been on Twitter, and so like, why
I
did
got it
you
right
get
here.
it? I think that one's simple.
Oh,
There
let's
it
Yeah.
is.
go.
Why did you get it? And like everything, like why did you get it? What have you done because of it? And like,
Yeah.
what are the results?
Okay, so this is a device here, the RNet 4, and basically it's a CO2 monitor, and it's portable, and it's just battery operated, and it's pretty small. So I first saw it. I actually didn't know about it for like a long time. Only like in the last 6 months I heard about it from Matt Mullenweg, who's the founder of WordPress. He had tweeted like a "What's in my bag" video, or he makes a blog post every year around it, and then I saw this product in there. I was like, oh, what is that? It looks kind of cool, and then started researching more into it. But the reason I got this was I just wanted to know what the CO2 levels were when I was doing work in like different areas. So I work most of the time like in my apartment, but I also have a kind of shared co-working space here in the city, and then sometimes I'll go to like cafes and stuff. And basically what the product does is it connects to your phone as well, so you'll get like notifications, but you'll get different readings of what the CO2 is at any given moment in your space. And what you can do with that information is basically like when the CO2 is high, so this number here is in the thousands, 1012 ppm, and that's like highlights the yellow piece right there. So that just tells me that the air quality right now is not optimal for me. I'm in an indoor space right now, and there's no like air circulation, and the outcome of that is basically lower cognitive function. So your brain doesn't operate as like peak performance based on your CO2 levels, right? And now you have a number, and you can start to visualize that. You can start to like do more extreme things, like maybe get more better circulation in your room, or open a window to get more air, fresh air in, and then you start thinking better. And I've ran the experiment of like been in places where it was like 2000 or 3000 ppm, and definitely like you just don't feel as good, especially like longer durations. It's kind of like the eating shitty food thing that we were talking about. And then going out of that environment, you naturally just feel so much better. It's kind of like common sense. Like you step outside, you're going to feel better because of the air quality most of the time, depending on where you live, right? So that's why I got this product, just to like visualize that and like see if I'm like in a very bad environment, I'll be more inclined to like step out, leave, open a window, that sort of stuff. And it's portable, so I'll like, take it with me.
Is there an analog for like I know air quality is a slightly different thing. That's particulates or something. Is that something you've tracked? Could consider tracking? Could build an app around? I imagine that matters quite a bit.
Yeah, the air quality. Yeah, I think that's also interesting. I think they have another product that does a similar thing. This is just the CO2, but they have an air quality one as well that does a similar, sends you notifications when you're in a bad zone and stuff. But I think all these things are super important, and just like things that you may not even pay attention to. Sort of like the idea of like eating shitty foods. Like it seems obvious, but it's not that. I don't think it's that common sense for a lot of people. Like, you're eating like horrible foods and you're feeling horrible, but that might not be the correlation that they make from it, right? But I think once you see it, similar to like wearing the Aura ring or Whoop or whatever, just like visualizing your sleep, you tend to make better decisions. At least I do. I don't know. Maybe you guys can speak to.
No, dude,
as well.
I think anything where there's a delay in like it's like whatever the opposite of delayed gratification, like delayed punishment. I feel like our brains have really hard time picking up on that, because like food, it legitimately took me. So for example, this is like another thing. Over COVID, I was really anxious all the time, probably because I'm stuck inside. I'm eating a bunch of junk food. But I was like, okay, I'm going to try CBD, which this was like CBD, like summer, whatever that was. It was huge. And I would take it and I wouldn't feel anything. And then I had this like walking around brain fog for like months. And I legitimately got a brain scan because I was scared. I felt like there was something wrong with me. And it was the CBD the whole time, but because like I didn't feel it immediately when I took it, it'd only come on, 6 hours later. I assumed I had to have been eating something, or it was because I was stuck inside all day. Uh, and that's happened to me like 10 different times where like, oh, like because the pain doesn't happen until even 10 minutes later, like I never connect the dots. And I feel like people are like that in general.
Yeah, that's really interesting. What was the brain scan, like a CT scan you did?
Yeah, I thought I had like
Oh,
a
okay.
tumor. Like legitimately, I was like really bad. And it was just CBD. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super fascinating, man. Have you guys done the like Prenovo stuff, like the body scan? Have you heard
Oh,
of
the
that?
full body scan.
No.
Yeah.
I keep like looking at it, and then it's like it's not an impulse purchase. Like it's like $1,500, right?
Yeah, it's pretty expensive.
And then I just keep not doing it, and then I wonder, like, is this just a thing for like hypochondriacs? You know, like is this just a thing that because it always, like these kind of scans were sold like to prey on people. It's like, hey, there's something wrong with you. Come get a scan. Like that was a big thing. Like I don't know how long, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. So I'm not saying this is that, but like that always gets in the back of my head. Like you just save $1,500 going to do this. The flip side is if it was $200, I'd be talking about my results right now.
Totally. Yeah.
That's kind of
I
the
also
issue.
think
Have you done one?
No, I haven't, but I also think you'll always find something. Like it could be like very minuscule and like unnecessary to even talk about, but that's the to your point of like these companies like preying on people. I actually think these scans have like gotten better from what I've seen, and anyone who I've talked to that has taken it says it's like the best scan they've ever done. But no, I've never done one, but I have. There's this one in the UK started by, you guys might have heard it, called Neko Health. Or I guess they started in Sweden. It was started by a Spotify founder, Daniel Ek, and it's like a $300 version of Prenovo, basically the same scan, I think, or very similar, but a lot cheaper. But they're only in the UK right now. So I signed up for the waitlist because I have a bunch of family in the UK and gave up my waitlist spot. So my cousin's gonna do a scan like next month.
Nice.
But that at that price point, I think it's like super interesting because
for sure,
$300 you get you get a full body scan and see everything about your body, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, since you don't know exactly what you're going in for, it's just like the delayed thing. Like you just don't know what you're getting out of it, so it has to be cheap enough that it's just a flyer.
Yeah.
I know when everyone was doing the 23andMe craze, everyone wanted to see where they're from. It's like, I'm Indian, case closed. Like I don't need to spend on this thing. And it looks like I lucked out, right? Because they leaked all their DNA results or whatever. So
right.
Have you guys done that?
I've done it.
Yeah.
Did you learn anything?
No, well, so my mom's adopted. Yeah. Oh, go for it. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
No. Go ahead, Jack.
Okay, so my mom's adopted. I didn't learn that until late in life.
Okay.
And so it was like this big question because my dad did it. So he's like, okay, he's English and like Croatian. Like my dad and Irish. Like Dwyer's the last name. It's Irish. Mom was a big question mark. It's like, okay, she's definitely probably white, but dark features, like tan skin. Turns out she's like 50% like Turkish or Syrian or something,
okay.
And then like 50% Italian. So it was very, very unexpected. Like I thought I was just because my brother's like very pale, but he has black hair. So we're like, oh, it must be just like some version of white. But it was interesting.
Okay, that's interesting.
See, but you had that reason to look,
Yeah. We had a reason to look.
What about you, Presh?
I had
What'd
no
you
reason
find
to
out?
look. And I found like it was the saddest. I was so excited going into the test because I would see these videos and like people finding out like all these different regions that they have DNA from, and mine was like 100% Sri Lankan. Literally,
100%.
It was like it showed the map and it was like 100% you are from here. And I was like, well, I guess that's cool, but I was like hoping for like, I don't know, some sort of like, I don't know, like China or like Japanese. Like I was just like hopeful that I had something. But yeah, that was my result.
Yeah. That's what I typically hear from Indians or Sri Lankans or anyone from that area. Because I do think it's kind of just culturally, like it's not even that you just have to be with someone from the same country. It's like the same sex, the same. So like, I think since everyone was like that and married that way, that the DNA results are quite boring, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's super accurate.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think that's a good place. But Presh, we always like to end the episode to kind of motivate young founders, old founders, whatever, don't need to be ageist. Whoever's watching this and wants to start a company,
Yeah.
or maybe thinks they can't, kind of like, what advice would you have to someone, or just to get them to go out there and do it?
Yeah. Okay. So now I think with LLMs and all the different softwares that are out now, like Replit, Lovable, Bolt, Cursor, these are all AI tools, but they really just allow you to test your idea. And you don't need to be technical. And if you do need to be technical, you can very quickly learn it through these tools. So I think the main thing is literally just whatever idea you have, just make it if you can make it through software. I haven't seen any that's actually be kind of interesting to look into, but like making hardware easier to build. I don't know if you guys have seen anything, but I imagine that's also will come soon. But I know at least with software, like any idea you have, you can put out an MVP and just build it and launch it in a weekend and get it out there, and then you'll get better. Or every new launch will be better than the last, and you can probably create something cool in the world. So that's the advice, really, just like whatever idea you have, just go this weekend and try to tinker on it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's great that you're giving out that message, because earlier in the episode, you talked about how it's not like you had to go become a expert programmer for the first app. It's like you could just duct tape a bunch of services together. Now you can still do that, by the way. You don't have to, use Cursor. But there also is a bunch of AI tools. So I think that's great advice. On the hardware side, I mean, you're just begging me to bring up a company. There's a company called RMFG. Our friend Kenneth started this company, Jack. And basically API endpoint to get sheet metal, which sounds insane, but is pretty cool. So definitely we are going to see, AI automatic hardware coming. So yeah, if your company, please go build it. No, there's no more excuses. And for Presh, please check out his stuff. If your neck hurts or your back hurts, go get Posture AI in the App Store now. If you can't sleep or you're tired, get Sunseek. And I guess kind of fatigue and get more energy, get GoPolar as well. So yeah, please search any of those in the App Store right now. Presh, it was great having you on. Thank you so much.
This is so fun, guys. Thank you for having me.
Cheers.
Loved it.